can do. I see. I've learned something new today. So, oh, okay, I see who it is now. Well, you'll just have to wait until 12:04, and I'll get back with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is some delay. So if you put a comment in there, don't expect a response right away. Yeah.
But yeah, and to kind of get to back with the idea of what I wanted to do a little bit today, maybe to just kind of start at the show is obviously we cover a couple of sports very heavily in the spring, like we do in the fall and winter as well. But the spring sports that we talk about quite a bit are softball and lacrosse. Uh, Obviously, basketball does run a little bit into that spring concept as well. But we've done a lot of recaps on basketball so far. So let's kind of get into a recap, guys, the three of us, and kind of round table it on softball and lacrosse here. And I think we could probably just go ahead and start it out, if you want to, with lacrosse. A season that I'll just start it out by saying it started well. Like the Cards were 4-2, and then as that season went on in lacrosse, they started getting into some conference games, and as you kind of may have realized, the ACC is very good in lacrosse, and we're not one of the teams that is basically considered to be top of the notch in lacrosse in the ACC. I think we were, if I'm not mistaken, we were 2-7 overall in the ACC, finished with a 5-12 record. So that was kind of tough for the Cards. I think we were, out of our last 11 games, we lost 10 of them. So
Yeah. That's
uh,
rough.
Jared was out there a lot taking photos and stuff like that. Jared, just kind of synopsis. What did you see on this team? 5-12. Obviously, it's not anything to brag about, but they were playing very top flight competition.
Yeah, they had a lot of bright spots out there. They had many runs and some great periods where they'd shut down opposing offenses. Uh, but it seems like they struggled with in-game adjustments, and then just at times almost being like overpowered, especially late in games, is where teams pulled away. Which obviously the ACC is a phenomenal program. One of those teams is playing in the championship tomorrow, Boston College, and they had to beat an ACC team to get there. I think 5 ACC teams officially made the NCAA tournament, which the lacrosse is a small field in terms of that. So I mean that certainly stands out. But also, it seems like the non-conference schedule isn't easy as well, or easy either. They started the season against Denver. Denver made it to the Final Four and just lost yesterday. So that's he lines it up with a lot of tough opponents, and I think Teeter's mindset is, look, you're either going to get better, or you're going to keep getting beat. And I think the team just hasn't fully figured out how to pull through and play the full 60 minutes yet.
And Jeff, when you look at that schedule, to obviously Denver and Colorado, both came here this year instead of the Cards going out to
Mm-hmm.
Colorado and playing out there. Two good competition there. Lindenwood, not real sure about them. That was a Louisville win, but they actually had their first conference game, fourth game into Virginia. Maybe that was kind of a precedent to tell us how we were going to do in the conference. So we
Mm-hmm.
lost that one 19-9. Teeter has talent. There's no doubt about it. And Teeter has some players that could probably go about anywhere and start. But any ideas on how they turn the corner here? How they get to where they've actually got a winning season again, like they used to have back in the previous coaches' days? And how did they turn this stuff
Well,
around?
let's be careful too much about comparing to previous coach. Um, we didn't most of her tenure. We didn't play in the ACC,
Yeah.
right? And the time that we did play, she didn't see much success there either. So let's try not to. I would be too. I would avoid making that comparison too strongly. But we've got we did 2-7 in conference this year, which is I think our best conference finish ever in the ACC. Um, it's not great, clearly, but it's it is the best it's been, and I think that's maybe the beginning of a slow but steady, continuous improvement type of regime going on here. At least I hope so. I'm optimistic of that. I always say that it is if you're looking at a program situation and it's improving year over year, then if I were AD, if I were Josh Hurd, I would say, you know what, it's improvement. Continue to improve, and we're good, right? It's when that improvement stops happening that you sometimes have to start looking at it and go, wait, what's going on here? Um, and you can't necessarily look at a one season slide with that or a one season big improvement on that. But, if there's overall trending better, you let it go. And I think we're maybe at the beginning of an uptick here, based on what I'm seeing here. The overall results, 5-12, wasn't great, but we also, we had a lot of conference games compared to, the out of conference. So, in the out of conference ones, like the ones we lost, 12-13 in overtime versus Cincinnati. Okay, that's a very, very close game. It was a very competitive game. So, there's work to be done clearly, but as long as, like I said, as long as there's signs of improvement, I'm okay with it.
It's just kind of looking at a little more detail on that. They did win 2 conference games, as you mentioned. We were able to beat Pittsburgh, which is a kind of new addition to ACC lacrosse. They have not sponsored a program. I think they're in their second year, maybe, for that at the end of this year. And then we also beat Duke to end the season, and that was kind of to determine our placing in the ACC tournament. And guess what? We drew Duke. So back-to-back against Duke. Shouldn't we beat them again? No, unfortunately. That one didn't quite turn out for us. Sandwiched in between that one, a loss to Notre Dame in South Bend, which is a very good lacrosse program. Guys, I'm needing to see more out of this lacrosse program. And the reason I say that is you've got basically, I think, 30-some scholarships that you can offer here, and you need to start getting in some top flight players that can come in and do the job. And I look around the league and I see a lot of top flight players. When I look at our roster, Hannah Morris obviously comes to mind. She was a very, very good one for Louisville and did some wonderful things in her time here. Take a look at some of the others. We have the Nakazawa sisters, who are here from Japan. And both were very active on the field for Louisville. Did some great scoring for the Cards. And once I get past those two, Allegra Catalano, obviously very strong, an attacker. She's graduating out this year, and I don't know if maybe
she is coming back.
She's going to be back for a graduate year.
I did her grad photos recently, and I said, "So you coming back?" And she said, "Yep." And I think there's a few other names that haven't been publicly announced yet that plan to return for next year as well. Not sure who all that may be. Hannah Morris is not one. She did run out of eligibility. She used her COVID year, but there's some players that, and I'm sure we could probably guess a few, but lacrosse will have some veteran returners next year.
And that's actually, I think, a good sign, right? If you have players that want to come back and play another year for the program, that suggests to me that they see potential there, right? Otherwise,
you have to think so. Yeah. It's where you're a senior and all of a sudden they haven't gone into the transfer portal and said, "Yeah, I played 4 years at Louisville, and boy, Wake Forest is interested in me now." Or, look at this, like North Carolina says, "Come play for me." No, they're staying back. They're coming back in. And Nicole Peroni is a great example. I don't know if she's going to be back or not, but she put in 4 great years here at this program.
Mm-hmm.
And if she returns, that would be a great boost to the midfield of Louisville's lacrosse squad. Absolutely so, because she plays quite well. You'd have to think the Nakazawa sisters will be back from Japan, and it's always wondered me, do they go back over for a few months or do they stay here? I'm not really sure on that. I know that Kokoro really became quite a bit more lively and active when her sister showed up to play here.
It's just got to make it a little easier, just to live life.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I think she was a junior last season. Her sister came in as a freshman, so they will have at least one more, maybe 2 more years together. I'm not sure,
Mhm.
but certainly both very, very good players, and something that gets the Louisville lacrosse program noticed right away too, Jared, is hey, they've got two girls from Japan out there playing.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, you kind of expect the Canadian players. That's pretty common with lacrosse, but pulling people
Particularly
from
Teeter.
yes, absolutely, but pulling players from across the Pacific Ocean, from Japan, that'll open your eyes. You're like, huh, what made them choose to go to Louisville? So I think that's certainly a good thing, and the coaching staff, uh, to me, does a great job recruiting as much as they can. Sometimes you wonder how invested athletics is with the lacrosse program, as well as how invested they are with other programs, such as a certain popular coach on campus mentioned in an interview recently. And part of that is I don't think lacrosse really has the upgraded locker room that I think they should in order to be able to compete with the recruiting. Um, they haven't really done much in terms with field upgrades in recent years, minus just the one video board addition.
Didn't they get a new turf surface a couple years ago?
I think it was a
That
couple years ago, but
I think
Yeah,
that was right when COVID
might
started,
have happened.
maybe.
Yeah,
Because
and it was needed, right?
absolutely it was. But how much money is also spent and delegated to recruiting, and
Yeah,
how much money do they delegate towards travel and whatnot? So sometimes just investing a little bit more money into a program can make a big difference, especially a nonprofit program that's on a limited budget as is.
I also think the lacrosse players have the majority of them are housed in the new dormitories that are actually across from where their practice fields are.
yeah, it certainly would be convenient for them if they
Yeah,
were. Yeah,
but to be quite honest with you, and I've gone down to talk to Scott Teeter and also assistant coach came over said on quite a few occasions over the years. And in order to get to the lacrosse offices, you have to go through the women's basketball offices. It's just the way it is. You
yeah,
know,
and it used to
they're
be volleyball, but yeah, it
yeah,
was.
used to be volleyball,
Yeah, it's just the way that building was built is just bizarre.
but there's a
You know.
little corner back there, and
Yeah,
I'm gonna call it the southwest corner. I might be wrong on that,
I think that's right. Yeah,
but that is where the lacrosse offices are in the Kerber Center, and so you have to take the elevator or walk up the steps to the second floor, and then cut through women's basketball, or say hi to the receptionist while you're walking through there. You may see one or two people. You always walk by. You used to walk by Sam Purcell's office all the time, and if he saw you, he'd always call you in and talk to you.
yeah,
If you
shocking.
yeah, it's Courtney Walton had an office over there on the actual hallway, and I think she's still got it there to lead back to lacrosse. So you had to pass by Courtney's office in order to get to lacrosse, and every time you walk by there, the door was always open. She was always frowning at a laptop, and God, I hope the girl figured out how to turn it on finally. No, I was just kidding. But she would always stop whatever she was doing and say, "Hi, hi, come on in," and sit and talk with her for a while. So you had to leave. I think I planned my trips 30 minutes early to talk to Teeter or Morissette
just to get through the women's basketball.
because I knew I had to run the gauntlet
Yeah,
before I actually got to lacrosse and basketball. And
it really is. It's just a bizarre
one
way
of
that's built out. The
one,
building, right?
yeah,
It
it
kind of
is
makes it
kind of
necessary.
it's a weird building because right directly below the lacrosse offices where the assistant coach, the coach, and their SAKs are located, where those three offices are. They have no receptionist.
Yeah,
Uh, that's where lacrosse locker room is. There's a back stairway that you can
yeah,
walk down, but it leads you outside. So it
yeah.
doesn't lead you to lacrosse.
That's it. I tell you, it's a bizarre building. It's not just that seems weird to me, but that's probably the most egregious example of it in that building. I don't know.
And it's although when you take a look at what they do there with lacrosse and everything, obviously the way that they are able to have easy access to where they play the majority of their home games, and it's a very nice environment when they're actually able to play on the Louisville lacrosse stadium floor. But they do need to
Yeah.
improve the lighting in order to play night games there.
Yeah.
And in that case where they have got night games scheduled, they have to move over to the football field, and you lose something. I don't care what anybody says. You lose something when you're playing in that big of a cavernous arena for football, and you've got a lacrosse team out there that's got what, maybe 1,500 people in the seats.
Yeah.
And
If
Jared,
that.
you've been out there to take photos before. You really do lose something, don't you?
Yeah, the football stadium is not designed as a lacrosse stadium. It just feels empty, and you could have, like you said, 1,500 people in there, which is a great crowd for lacrosse, and that feels like nothing. And the expenses just to use the football stadium are pretty astronomical in terms of your lighting you've got to work, your electronics, the staff that has to be there. They have to hire a contractor to come in and put in some tarps to cover your lower level suites with all that glass so an errant pass or shot doesn't go through and shatter the glass. So your expenses build up really quickly as opposed to just doing it at the lacrosse stadium. So, and I'm not sure how much the lights cost, but I'm sure they're not cheap by any means. But I think at some point you may want to look at upgrading the lights there, like softball did recently, and that volleyball's doing here in the off season at some point.
Mhm.
And then you can showcase nighttime games that sometimes may end up making its way onto TV.
I think it would be fun to have that happen on campus. Yes, so we're right across the stadium, right across where it is, to get those lights improved.
Mhm.
Because there's parking, you don't have to worry about parking for that area. Even if you're parking at the football field, it's not that far a walk back down.
No.
And I've always been able to find a place to park close to lacrosse for lacrosse matches. Unfortunately, I only got to one last year, and that kind of bummed me out a little bit because I wanted to do more of them. But unfortunately, my health concerns weren't quite where I could go ahead and do that. But I do want to make sure to get out and see more of them. The coaching staff's fine. Scott Teeter could be maybe one of the better coaches on campus. He's a great with the players. He's really knowledgeable of the game. He cares about the school. He cares about what he does here. The problem is he's in a league of guardian of champions. I mean, the
That's
ACC
brutal.
is
Yeah.
tough. Uh, they say if a good league, you could take one of the worst teams in a good league, and they could probably go ahead and win a lesser league, and that might be
Mhm.
true with Louisville. Very possible. But lacrosse is still a work in progress, and I know we probably said the same thing last year. So maybe it's a long road to get to the top. We'll see. But I think there are some good players returning. Jared mentioned some of the ones that have been listed as seniors could be as graduate students, and all because of COVID, obviously. But how long does that COVID codicil run, guys?
We're just about done
This
with it.
is it.
Yeah, I
The
think this is the last cadre of them.
the rising senior class is the last one that's eligible for it.
Yeah.
So an interesting time in NCAA sports history, where
Yeah.
basically they just said, here's another year.
I kind of like
Lots
having
of
a
record book asterisks going on right now.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So we'll certainly hope that they can get things together, and I'm probably going to try to get in and talk with Teeter later on this summer a little bit. But he's such a busy man doing stuff with Team Canada and things like that.
Mhm.
We'll endeavor to get that on campus so and do a recap with him as well on some of the things he thinks. And of course, it's always great to go and just to go up to see Kay Morissette and talk with her. Still one of the best draw control specialists I've ever seen in college lacrosse, and now an
Yep.
assistant coach on a team.
Yep.
And always just fun to talk to. Recently married not too long ago, and promised she would show me how to catch bass.
Hmm.
And I said,
All right.
can we use a pole for this? but anyway, so yeah. Let's. I mean, it's. I don't think Teeter's job's in any type of quandary right now or worry. I do think we've got an athletic director that will give him the time necessary. And if he's even showing some steady improvement, that's good, because he's got to take a look at what kind of conference he's in and the talent that is there. So, all right, good stuff on lacrosse. Softball, of course, obviously another sport that took place in the spring, and Cards a very, very good softball team, which where most people kind of take a look at them and what they do and how they play. The name Taylor Roby comes to mind right away. Taylor Roby, a two-way star for the Cards, incredible pitcher, the all-time home run leader in Louisville history, and a team that went 36-20. Jeff, a team that was 16-7 in conference. Not bad
Not
at all
bad,
there
actually. Yeah, yeah.
for all
Uh,
that.
I definitely see this as a step forward for that program this season. It again, there's a ways to go before we get to the level that we like to see our programs be. But again, continuous improvement. It's a step forward. I like what happened. I like this season. I like the talent that's there, the talent that's coming back. We do lose some some very talented and important players on the squad. But there's also a lot of really great players who are going to come back, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch them next year, uh, based on what they did this year and expecting a little bit of improvement in the offseason. Um, there's I have optimistic hopes. I was a little pessimistic early in the season, but then I saw when I really saw them playing, it was like, okay, this is they're putting this together. They had a lot of injury problems last year that really kind of knocked that season out of whack, that we didn't really have this year, and we really get to see what this group of players is really capable of. And I think it was pretty good results.
Louisville, of course, did make the NCAA tournament this year. A nice plus for the program, and ended up going to. If I gave you a multiple choice of four, no, they went to Knoxville again. Gee, go figure. They were in Tennessee's regional. Tennessee, the fourth ranked team in the nation. The Cards part of that regional, and were actually down there to start out not against Tennessee, but actually to start out against Indiana from the Big Ten in a game that you had to wonder if it was ever going to get played after delays and rain and stuff like that. The teams finally did take to the softball field. Indiana won a close 4-3 game with a late inning heroics where Louisville basically led this thing almost the whole way, and then all of a sudden Indiana struck at the end and grabbed a 4-3 victory. But Jared, this was a team that certainly had some very nice surprises, not only in the catching position, but also some infield positions that really stepped up and looked pretty good for Louisville.
Yeah, just as a whole, we finally got to see Daisy Hess, who performed really well both on the defensive end and then with her bat. As you mentioned, Sarah Gordon, ACC Freshman of the Year, right there, and
Yeah, true
what she
freshman.
was, yeah, what she was able to do, that's incredible. Louisville's never had an ACC Freshman of the Year, and I'm not sure Louisville's had a conference Freshman of the Year, regardless what conference they've been in, to my knowledge. You've got Corby Otis, who's only a sophomore, but her poise and composure and leadership acts like she's a 4-year veteran. So you've got a lot of strong talent there. You had a strong freshman pitcher come in, Alyssa Zabala, that for a freshman and what she was able to do in the circle was really good, with a lot of a high ceiling for development. You've got young players still, Ali Alexander, Easton Lotus, out in right field when we saw Vanessa Miller and Pickle Winkler sharing time. There's a lot of young talent on this team, and there's
Paige
even
Garrity.
more that
Mhm.
that we just really didn't get to see much. Garrity transferred in and still has a couple years there, which is
Mhm.
nice to have. We didn't see much of Cassie Grizzard, the left-handed pitcher this year. Something I'm hoping will really focus on next
So,
year. You don't see a lot of lefty pitchers in softball just because the advantages aren't as high as are with baseball, which makes that position so rare. And I think you need to utilize that. And she's going to be great, especially during a 3-game conference series, just to throw something different at the opponent.
Certainly one that we'll look forward to see doing good things for Louisville out there as the Cards will, I think, bring back, I think, a pretty solid lineup. And we'll just run through it real quickly on this. Obviously, Gordon, we would think would be a shoe in the catcher again
yeah.
the upcoming season. First base is open,
Mhm.
so we're going to have to see who rises up, whether it'll be a freshman coming in that'll take over first base, one of the players that are on the roster that could move over there and play first base. We'll have to see what happens there. Second base is, I think, they're going to have to steal this one away from, is it Lotus that's at second base?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Easton Lotus. It's at second
Yeah.
base. Uh, Over at shortstop, of course, Daisy's got another year where she can play over there, and certainly did some very, very good things. And then third base, Allie Alexander, back again. She had actually started with Louisville as a shortstop when Hess was coming in. I think Coach met with her and he said, "Hey, I've lost my third baseman. Would you move there so I can put Daisy at shortstop?" And Allie said, "Yes, I'll go there."
Hmm.
Shows a
Which
lot.
I think Allie is more comfortable at third anyway. She played more third base in high school than she did short. So playing short last year wasn't completely foreign, but it was not her primary position. So sliding over helps, and having a true shortstop was nice. But infield purposes, as you mentioned, the only position that's really wide open right now is first base. And
Mhm.
nobody on the returning roster really stands out as a first baseman for me. So I think it's going to either be a freshman or a transfer in.
And certainly a very important spot on the infield, no doubt about that. But I'm sure that the Cards, after all, they are an ACC team. There are players out there who play first base who may have had a great season, like we saw with Daisy Hess. I can go from Georgia State to Louisville. Yes, please let
Yeah.
me come up and play with you. And has done a one job there. Outfield, maybe a couple question marks on what's going to go on there, but certainly Otis is back and will patrol her area well. I think they had a couple of rotating players in right field, if I remember correctly, Jared. And then I guess left field might be a question mark too. But
I actually think outfield is pretty well secure uh, from what I've seen. Obviously, Corey Otis is not going anywhere. She's got that center field position until the day she graduates. Left field, Paige Garrity spent roughly 90% of the time out there. She showed some bright spots with her bat as a slap hitter. I think what she struggled with in the outfield is her first steps. Just you got to first step back as an outfielder always. Uh, Being able to close the gap on a fly ball. But that's something you can really work with on a defender, no problem. Right field, we saw a lot of back and forth between Pickle Winkler, Vanessa Miller, and I think really what determined that was who was going to produce better at the plate. And late in the season, I think Vanessa Miller was one who really started to step it up. She had a couple home runs in the regional. Actually, we've seen that power out of her last year, so I think she, at the moment, she's locked right field up. But Pickle Winkler could easily step in the outfield as need be. But Pickle and Mia Forsyth are going to be your top two pinch runners as of right now.
We did see Pickle in left field a little bit as well, so there was a little bit of movement around in the outfield. But the same general group of players, I think, fairly interchangeable out there.
and so that we've just sat here and talked about 9 positions, and 8 of them seem to be returning people who have played those positions last year are back in them. So that's a great thing for a coach to be able to look at and say, okay, now what I can do is change my focus. And if I got anybody coming in that can beat out the incumbent, instead of saying, I got to fill this gap, what am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
You've already got somebody in there. First base being the only open spot there, I'm sure she can find a first baseman anywhere and get a good one. But one of the most important positions, though, on the mound, in the circle, as they say it, or the flat mound, however you want to refer to it, uh, you're losing a great one in Roby, yes. We've got a great one returning in Zabala, and also 2 very, very good freshmen coming into campus from high school. Uh, 2 girls that I think will be very, very, very good and work their way into the starting lineup for the Cards. Brooke Gray out of Ballard High School. She's getting ready to try to win another state championship for Ballard this year. They just won the 7th region. She's an incredible pitcher, averaging 12 strikeouts a game. Somebody that I think could come in and make immediate impact on the Cardinals pitching staff. And also Lindsey Mullen coming in from Virginia, where she is, I think, won the state championship with her high school in Virginia last year and has been compared as having a very, very good fastball. Lindsey Mullen from Virginia. So 2 good pitchers to a staff that really wasn't that bad, was it, Jared?
No, not at all. I mean, obviously, as you mentioned, losing Taylor Roby is going to be a big hit both sides of the ball. But there's already a pretty decent pitching staff as is that you hopefully we'll see improve more. But Alyssa Zabala will probably be your go-to pitcher next year. But as mentioned already, Cassie Grizzard had some bright moments. She shut out UK in the final couple innings in that game at Lexington. But we haven't mentioned Sam Boo or Gabby Holloway yet, and both of them came in and provided some really solid innings. I think there's still just a little bit lack of consistency there, but the fact that you've already got 4 pitchers returning at the moment and you've got 2 really strong freshmen coming in, you've got a lot to work with on the pitching side, and I'm sure Griffin Joyner, who's our pitching coach, is excited to have so many options, and you just hope they stay healthy. I know the early years of Holly April, healthy pitchers was a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
A big problem
Yeah.
in their first couple of years. You wonder too a little bit about in my situation. I wonder about Holloway, who came back from devastating injuries to rejoin the staff and to come in and provide some good relief work and an occasional start. Is she one of those ones that might maybe step up and say, "Okay, you need to work me into the starting rotation here, coach"? I'm going on. I think what is it her 4th year with the program? Am I right on that?
I believe she's a rising senior. I don't know her status in terms of if she would use the COVID year. I don't believe she qualified for any redshirt seasons because her injuries came too late in seasons in the past.
But it's certainly one that I think a good right-handed pitcher that would be able to help the Cards out a lot. I guess my only real question is obviously in Roby you had the home run threat. I think she finished with 2nd in the nation in home runs, as the all-time leader at Louisville in home runs. Does one person pick up that bat and say, "Okay, I'm going to be where Roby was last year"? I don't see it that way. I see it as maybe being a combination of several players to kind of fill in where she was at. Am I right here?
Yeah, and I think the home run numbers are going to be down next year, in my opinion, uh, mainly because of how much Roby brought to the plate, both figuratively and literally on that. But you've got a lot of players, outside of Corby Otis and Sarah Gordon and Daisy Hess, who have shown they can consistently hit home runs. You've got a lot of players who have speed. They just put the ball in the outfield and they've got speed. Louisville had a lot of doubles this past year, and we saw a decent amount of triples. Corby Otis led the team, but several players had 3, 4, 5 triples on the year. And that's just due to how much speed this team has. And I know in the past, sometimes Louisville's had stronger, less speedy players in defensive positions in the field, but Holly April's elected to go to kind of a smaller, quicker lineup this past season. I think we're going to see that again in the future. So what we're going to make up for from the home runs is going to be a lot of singles, doubles, and hopefully aggressive base running.
When you take just a quick look at it, you had a total of 6 players that bat over 300 batting average for the year. That's pretty nice when you take a look at them. They were all very significant in the lineup, and 2 of them will not be back, unfortunately. Roby's gone, and Hannah File gone. But Easton Lotus at 303, Daisy Hess 335, Sarah Gordon 379 as a freshman, and also Corby Otis who batted 414 for the year. Now, that's pretty incredible right there.
Mm-hmm.
And then just knocking at the door, and right behind that, of course, was Paige Garrity at 275. So some proven hitters coming back in here. One of the things that I wonder about a little bit, though, is when it comes to actually coming with a pitching rotation instead of batting. I guess you're going to have to wait and see how it goes in preseason, Jared. But there's a couple of pitchers you almost have to kind of include in that pitching rotation for starts. But there's freshmen coming in that are superb in what they've done.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've got the whole off season to work with that and figure out who you want as your primary pitchers. But it may come down to which pitchers can be productive as a hitter as well. Last year, Taylor Roby was the only one who actually saw any at bats. None of the other pitchers had a plate appearance, and that will really dig into your substitutions and your availability with people. If your pitcher uh, isn't able to hit and you're having to pull other players from the dugout from your lineup to be a designated hitter and maybe having to sub them out here and there. So, and I don't know what our incoming freshmen, if they're able to be productive as a hitter as well. But maybe we'll try and see if any of our current pitchers, have a little luck with the bat too.
I know Ballard has not used Gray a whole lot at the plate in their quest for another state championship. But when you're striking out 12 players a game and
Yeah.
holding other teams to 1 or 2 hits, it's just like, you don't want to bat? That's fine. Just keep throwing strikes.
That's okay. Yeah.
That's okay. We'll find somebody to swing. You just be good in the circle. That's fine. And I'm sure she'll be continued to do so. And also a very delightful player. I'm going to try and get her an interview with her too if I can this summer and talk with her a little bit because we had a brief chat and just very intelligent, very smart, very much into Louisville too, which is something where she's kind of like, I grew up as a little girl wanting to play softball at Louisville.
Right.
And now
That's great to hear.
my dream has come true. She said I would be able to out there with my parents watching and to do sitting out there and down the third base line down there up in the middle bleachers with my glove hoping somebody would hit me a foul ball. That's pretty cool. That's a nice trajectory toward belief in your program. So okay, Holly, upward and onward is I guess the recommendation here. Keep it going. 36-20 is a good year. Keep it going. Get even better. And beat Kentucky next year too.
Yeah.
We'd like that. All right. Other things that we were going to talk about just a little bit here, track. Of course, obviously, we've got a couple of Cardinals that'll be headed down to Austin for the NCAA National Championship meets down there. Starting at, we've got Sinclair Savage placed 9th in the long jump. I do believe she went to the NCAAs last year. And also, Aaliyah Welter was 11th in the pole vault. Another one, if I'm not mistaken, who was in the NCAAs last year, Jared.
Yeah, and it's great to see both of them back there again this year. And representing the women's side of track and field, there's obviously a chance we may see 1 or 2 more women's student athletes punch their tickets today in the final round. I'm not sure which events are still going on. Historically, it seems like for UofL track and field, a lot of those field events have really taken off and just been phenomenal. I mean, even on the men's side, it seems like most of the qualifiers were field events with discus throw, shot put. But just to see both of these players being able to represent UofL and just the seasons they've had is great. And I'm hoping to maybe see them produce more, at the championships, but also both of them are really close to their own personal records as is. So even if they can beat their own personal records, if they don't finish first, I mean, that's a hell of a year right there.
It is indeed. And I think the meet begins today at 1 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken, as Louisville Track and Field is basically taken over women's athletics Twitter on campus right now. They've got a bunch of stuff up there about the NCAA East preliminaries and some of the other things going on. So if you want to get caught up on how they're doing there, certainly follow Twitter and make sure and check out Louisville Track and Field. You'll get a lot of information on that. Let's kind of move from the athletic side of things, though, quickly in the few minutes we've got left here. Hey, let's go to academics. Why not? I mean, you got to get the grades in order to play, right?
Yep.
Sure do. And boy, that message got across to the field hockey team, did it not?
That's it. This seems to be a tradition that when they announce academic success rates and GPAs, cumulative team GPAs in the spring, that field hockey always seems to put theirs out last, which is probably good because they're always the highest too, it seems. So credit to Justine Sauer's squad and the work that they do. Theirs was like a 3.81 something. Which, I mean, if you think about it, with a team the size and a roster the size that field hockey has, that's a really, like, most players are 4.0 athletes with only a couple of B's mixed in that. That's that's impressive to be across that many people. So definitely, shout them out for an amazing season in that respect. Guys, do you remember what some of the other volleyball was around 3.5? Soccer, I think, was like 3.7. So they did really well as women's soccer as well. I don't know, Jared, or if you remember any of the others that you saw.
Off the top of my head, I can't remember, but 19 of the 21 Division One recognized programs that UofL has were 3.0 or better.
Yeah.
Well, you almost got it right. I'm looking at it now. It was 22 out of the 23.
Oh, that was close.
But still,
yeah,
that's amazing.
That's impressive.
That's tough, especially for the teams, and not to bash the fall and winter sports because their success should still be acknowledged. But for a team that's in season, such as your spring sports, to still be able to produce such high numbers from a GPA and academic standpoint, while spending a majority of your time practicing, traveling, performing in games and events, that's difficult. I mean, there's not a lot of time to sleep or have free time. And I think you just need to credit athletics as a whole, how much they've preached the importance of academics over the years and really put a focus on that and provided several resources to assist these student athletes, both on campus, on the road, online, whatever it may be in terms of tutoring, support, whatever they may need to find success on the academic side.
And I was always excited if I could get to a 3.0.
Right?
in my years.
Yeah.
Several teams, actually, Jeff, had individuals with perfect 4.0s on the semester.
Yeah.
Women's track and field, for example, 13 athletes with a 4.0. Women's swimming, 11. Women's soccer had 10. That's just amazing stuff. 96 student athletes graduated in the spring semester, with 111 total graduating this most recent school year. So, yes, academics is important at Louisville, and they seem to be quite proficient at it. They do very well at it.
Well, and here's the other thing I noticed. I'm going to shout this out. Where there are both men's and women's sports that are the same sport, or at least very similar, to include softball and baseball, the women outperform the men, every one of them.
Oh, yeah, I would say.
Yeah.
And that's a
across the board,
not only to the coaches, but to the assistant coaches and the academic support advisors, everybody else who's making sure that the girls are going to get it done in the classroom. Because let's face it, not a lot of them are going to go pro. Okay.
Right.
And when you're out there interviewing for jobs after you've graduated, and you can say, yeah, I had a 3.6 my 4 years, 10 at Louisville, and majored in finance. There's going to catch a lot of job interviewer and recruiters attention. They're going to, oh, yeah? Okay, let's talk about starting salary.
Yeah. And this has not happened in my experience in the technology field where I am as a manager. I haven't really had the opportunity to hire someone that was a D1 athlete, but I guarantee you, I see it on somebody's resume or curriculum vitae or whatever. That's going to pique my interest because that person is a hard worker. They're dedicated to what they do. They're willing to put in the effort to do things well and correctly and not cut corners. So it's very definitely a positive thing to look at and say, hey, okay, let's put that on your resume because it's important.
Absolutely do put that on your resume if you're in that situation, because people will pay attention to it.
Yeah.
I can remember years ago in a job where I was a warehouse manager, I had a chance to interview a former Cardinal bird for a job position. And that's the first thing that stood out to me. I didn't look at grade point average. I didn't look at work experience or anything down in the other column on their resume. I saw I was the Cardinal bird from. No,
for the mascot. Yeah.
Really? You were the actual mascot? That's great.
again, hard work and
Yeah,
sacrifice to be able to
you
do that
can
because
lift
it,
boxes, I bet.
yeah,
You could be my assistant manager. Come to work for me. So I don't know if there, but yeah, just before we get into some final thoughts here, certainly WNBA is going on right now. There are still some Louisville greats that are participating in the WNBA. Dana Evans, of course, still at Chicago. Maisha Handel currently sitting right now, I think, with a knee issue
yeah, still
and
recovering from some knee from a knee surgery, I think. So
kind of recovering from that. And then Liz Dixon still hanging on down in Phoenix, if I'm not mistaken, as kind of the type of contract she's on. I think she's in there on an injury basis for somebody else.
yeah,
So when that other player returns, but maybe they'll decide to keep her after that. I don't know. Liz certainly a hard worker for that. So WNBA, we still got some interest there. Of course, let's not forget Asia Dewar either. Okay,
yeah, AD,
because the AD, as she prefers to be referred to these days, is certainly doing some wonderful things out on the court as well, and as
yeah, she's back.
looks to be totally recovered
Did
from
pretty
COVID.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah, she did pretty well.
so keep it going out there, AD. Sync 2. But yeah, let's go ahead and roll into some final thoughts now. I think as we've had, boy, the hours just seem to fly by today, as they sometimes do. Jeff, what do you got for me on final thoughts?
Yeah, I know Daryl got to spend a little bit of time with Henny coming in on the basketball team. She also got to meet with Brigitta Petrenko, who is transfer coming in to be a setter for the volleyball team. They're also the volleyball team are all in the gym right now. They get a practice time that most teams don't because they are going on this international trip. Teams get to do this at least in volleyball. I think this may be across the board. Once out of every 5 years is what they can do this. This one got delayed. They were getting ready to go on one when COVID hit, so this one was delayed a little bit. They're headed to Brazil, so they get some extra practice time for that. It's one of the reasons that they like to do these trips. So they're in the gym. Daryl's getting to meet a lot of these players as they come in and process through. So it's pretty cool to see it.
It is cool, and then Daryl pointed out to us in their article about that. They actually have an international map
Yeah,
where the players can actually go up and put, I guess, a pin or something,
yeah, push pin. Yeah,
yeah, on where they're from in the world. That's got to be pretty cool to look at.
yeah,
Just look at that and go, who's this one here from Belgravia?
yeah.
So good stuff there, Jared. What you got?
Just more, I guess, sad that all the sports are over for the season, and I'm not used to going extended periods of times without grabbing my camera and going to campus for something or another. Because I thoroughly enjoy being out there and capturing the moments and the celebrations and the emotions and just everything out there, and knowing that there's no sports until sometime in mid to late August is always a bit of a bummer. I like having a rest period, but I enjoy spending my time out there at the games. So look on the sad side that the season's over.
Jared will have to actually get MapQuest installed when the fall starts up again to remember how to get to campus. So that, and we do appreciate 100% all the work that he does for us down there on a photography basis, taking pictures of the very many women's sports that we cover here, and certainly seems to be also popular with the players and the coaches as well. So good work there, sir. But you've got other fish to fry coming up here very soon with a wedding. So shift gears for a couple weeks here, bud.
Yeah, we'll see how I get used to and adjusted to having a ring on my finger and how that feels.
Absolutely so, yeah. And it makes a difference in your life. I can tell you that. I can tell you that indeed. As far as me, kind of final thoughts here as we transition a little bit into what's going on to what we call sometimes the dead period or the slow period in Cardinal athletics. We're going to try to do everything we can here to make sure it's not that slow, not that dead for you by getting a chance to do some interviews and things of that nature. I am hoping for a couple of things. I am still obviously waiting for a kidney transplant. I am still kind of waiting to see if I can find a donor. Unfortunately, I had a donor fall through because of something that the administrative board that was going to do the first one for me found in that person's physical nature that made them ineligible as a candidate. That was disappointing. That was heartbreak. But sometimes, you lose a close game, you've got to go right back out. And so I'm still looking actively for a donor. But uh, as long as I'm strong and as long as I'm still able to, I am going to try to keep up interviews with players and such. And certainly, I'd like to take just a second to thank everybody for the notes I've gotten online, uh, emails, other ways of people communicating with me that have told me to continue to fight. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep on fighting. So thanks. If you're one of those people, thank you. And if you weren't, shame on you. No, I'm not kidding. Uh, I know your thoughts are right there. But that'll kind of do it for us, and certainly appreciate everybody listening. We'll see you next week at 11 a.m. Here on the Cardinal Couple Radio Hour podcast. Make sure and catch the replay and go Cards!